All right. So welcome to this session. This is the part three of three, understanding venture capital. So this is on business plan preparation, pitches, term sheet, and negotiation basics. Um, I'll skip the introductions. It's there in part one and two recordings. Um, so let's get right into the details. So this is what we're going to do. Today we're going to do the business plan preparation, pitches, term sheet, and negotiation basics.
Chola, TV off
Yeah.
பண்ணுவா.
Okay, can you put your phone on mute, please? So it should be good. So this one is just a slide that shows the importance of a business plan. So you see a number of people just come up with a very basic business plan, like here is me, give me money, that kind of stuff. So it's just so it's more than just saying you need money, right? So that's what these cartoons sort of convey, right? So what is a business plan? Business plan is a document setting out business's future objectives and strategies for achieving them, right? And if you are seeking capital, it must be a business, not just an idea. Many times entrepreneurs think that if they just have an idea that venture capitalists are going to give them money. That's not true. So businesses get funded, ideas don't get funding, right? So you need to show how you're going to make money and when you're going to make money. That's the purpose of a business plan. So you might have the greatest ideas on earth, but unless you show how it's going to turn into money, you're not going to get funded either from angels or from venture capitalists, right? And it's a document that makes the argument on why someone should buy from you rather than wait for the next release from established players like Microsoft, Oracle. So this happens all the time. So people start a B2B software company, and there are established players, large behemoths like Microsoft, Oracle. They can kill a small company, a startup company, with just a press release saying in the next version of Windows, we are going to include it for free. So that kills the whole market for a startup. So the customers will say, why do I need to buy someone from a small guy who might be here today, may not be here tomorrow? I'll rather wait for someone even 1 or 2 or 3 years. I'll wait for someone established who's going to be around rather than a startup company. This is an argument you're going to see till you're about 3 to 5 years established as a startup company. Everybody will say, nice idea, great implementation, but I'll just wait for someone else to do it, like Microsoft or Oracle. So this is a very real thing. That's why thinking about all of this stuff is very important, right? For startup companies, 10 to 12 page Word documents is no longer done. Usually when you go and search on Google, you'll see a lot of those kinds of business plan samples. For tech startups, usually you just need to do a 10 to 15 slide PowerPoint presentation. I'll take you through all the details and what it should contain and what are all the things that go into it, right? So all of those things we'll talk about. Right, so what should a business plan contain? So it contains all these slides. 1 or 2 slides for each one of these things is exactly what makes up a 15-slide PowerPoint presentation. So first slide is what is the problem, right? And then you have what is your solution? How big is the market? So that's the market size slide. So who are your competitors? This is extremely important because competition is you got to outline how you're going to be different from competition, how your solution is better, right? And who is on your team, the different experiences. I have details on each of these things as we go along. What is your sales strategy? What are your financial projections, financial summary? So then you also need to talk about what is your secret sauce, right? So is your company coming up with some intellectual property that is patentable, right? Can you get patents on your innovations or inventions? or it could be a trade secret, right? So if your business is something like Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola came up with a formulation that is still a trade secret, right? So in their headquarters, that mix is actually inside a safe, and then they take it out and give it to bottlers, and that's a trade secret. So it's how they actually mix the original formulation for Coca-Cola, right? So patents, trade secrets, that's your intellectual property. What is your exit strategy? Like, how are you going to return the money to the investors, right? And then you also need to have a slide on how much money are you seeking and how will you use them, right? So we'll go over each one of these things in detail. So the problem slide. What is the problem and why should it be solved? Efficiency, effectiveness gains, you need to say in monetary terms, right? So in a subsequent slide, I have a number of examples. I even threw in videos from prize-winning business plan presentations. So they'll always talk about, you can get an idea of how to express the problem, right? So if it's a security thing, then you may want to say, this is the problem we are addressing in security, and it's important to address it now because computer security, there's a lot of people holding sites to ransom, and so this is a very key problem. Right? It can be a workflow solution that sort of improves efficiency or effectiveness, so you need to bring out how does it actually help people. Most importantly, is this a nice to have or is this a must have, right? So business plans that outline a problem that are sort of nice to have won't get funding. It must be a must have kind of solution, right? So most importantly, is the painful enough for your customers to spend money on soon, right? That it may be a problem. Customers may say, I can live with it for another 5 years. I don't need to solve it right now. So that's something that may not get money, right? The solution slide, explain in simplest terms possible. Don't get carried away by technology. A lot of Indian entrepreneurs, technology entrepreneurs, they just keep going on and on about how they do this in Java or in C or C++ and how it is superior. The minute you do that, you lose credibility with venture capitalists. This is about a business. You can mention some technology, but more you talk about technology and features, investors will think that you're amateurs, right? The technology and the features are just a way to address the problem. They're not the main point of this whole business, right? And so this is a key thing to remember when you put the solution slide. Always keep focus on the business benefits, not on how great the technology is, right? And the market size, total addressable market, and compound annual growth rate. So these are things that you need to go out and find out. If your startup is in computer security, you need to go to Google and type in computer security market size, right? And you'll see a number of reports there. Like I was saying in the slide, Google is your best friend. There are research firms like Gartner, Forrester, C2B Insights. They all have articles for free. They all sell their detailed reports, but you don't need a detailed report for your business plan. You just need some, they'll have the total global market is $43 billion and it's growing at 20% CAGR. That's what you'll see. You'll see the word CAGR, that's compound annual growth rate. So is it a growing market, right? Remember in part 1 and part 2, I emphasized that venture capital is suitable only for markets that are growing exponentially, like a J curve, right? And so this is why you need to go and dig up this information and put it on your presentation, right? For a very early stage startup, it doesn't matter too much, but if you're going for Series A or Series B funding, if you already have customers and you're generating revenues, this is a very key thing, right? And so I have some example articles there. on cloud security market size. You can click on it and see where it leads you. So that's how you do your research and do the market size slide. Right? The competition slide, you need to mention who are your competitors, and many entrepreneurs say, I have no competition, like I've invented this great thing that there is no competition. And the minute you say that, the meeting is over. They're not going to fund you, right? Because everything has competition. As examples, I put in there, sports is a competition to movies and TV, because if you're watching sports, you're not watching movies or TV. Social media is a competition to sports. If you're looking up on Facebook, then you're not watching TV, and so the TV coverage is getting less viewers, right? And so everything has got competition. You just need to think very hard, and you can always put it in the form of an onion, like which one is the closest competition. And the more information you put in like this, the more credibility you have, right? So let's say you are in computer security, so you can say security event management is my closest competition. You need to figure out 3 or 4 companies. And then computer security in general might be a competitor. Even companies in computer security that don't have a product as yet exactly like what you're doing, they can still do. Large companies can put together a team very quickly, and they can do a press release saying, don't buy anything from this small startup company. They may not be around tomorrow. We are creating one. Just wait 6 months, and boom, your customers are gone, right? They would rather wait for that. So this is why analyzing the competition is very, very important. And have compelling strategies for how you're going to win. What makes you different from other people? So, and what is your? So it can be we provide better security at very low prices, right? So that can be a differentiating factor. So if your competitors are having software that costs $200,000 for an enterprise license, and you come up with a computer security model that's cloud-based and it's SaaS, and you're saying it's going to cost you $25 per user, and if you have 100 users, that's $2,500 or $25,000, right? So that's how you are actually going to differentiate how your business approach is different from the existing customers, right? So this is key, because you need to sort of outline how you're different from other people, right? The team slide, right? This is a very critical slide for any venture capitalist. VCs are always looking for at least 2 founders, right? Very rarely do they fund companies with 1 founder. Like Facebook had 1 founder eventually, Mark Zuckerberg, but that doesn't happen 99.9% of the time. They're looking for, even this is good advice even for people. So if you are a technical person, go find somebody who is maybe technical, but they are interested in sales, right? And the skills need to be complementary, right? So if one person is very shy and the other person has got really good communication skills, that's a good team, right? Not everybody has to be in front of people speaking, right? So one person is really good technically but is very shy and is not very communicative, that's fine, right? As long as you have other founder who will probably take on the position of a CEO or a president, and they also need to do sales, right? If you have somebody who has sales kind of experience, that's even better. So if you have more than 2 founders, if you have 3 or 4 founders, just make sure that they all either have complementary skills, or they are interested in, one is interested in taking on sales, one is interested in doing technology, one is interested in doing marketing, one is interested in handling customer support. So before you go and do the business plan, just have a chat among yourselves, figure out who is going to do what, and 5 years from now, when the company is larger, who's going to be heading all these different functions, right? And so, and venture capitalists and angel investors are always wary of two technical guys with very similar kind of background. It's not bad as long as they can figure out, oh, I'm going to be handling the engineering function, he's going to be handling sales and customer support, right? They need not have experience, but as long as you sit down and figure out, hey, these are my strengths and weaknesses, these are your strengths and weaknesses, and this is how we're going to perform our duties going forward. Okay. The next slide talks about the sales strategy slide. So this makes more sense for Series A and B funding. So if your startup is just dealing with some ideas right now, and venture capitalists don't take the sales strategy slide seriously because you need to develop the product much further before thinking of sales. But that's for seed funding. So if you're going for Series A funding, it means that you already have some clients and you have some revenues. And so this needs to be, in the next 5 years, how are you going to go do your sales, right? And before you do the business plan presentation, you need to actually do all the work on spreadsheets. So you can start out very simply saying, year 1 through 5, this is how many customers I want to close. This is the average sales by month. So go month by month for the first year 1 and year 2, and then go year by year for 3, 4, and 5, right? And you can work out like rather than just pull numbers from the air and put it in in your presentation, do the spreadsheet first, and then you can pull the total numbers summary into your sales strategy slide. It doesn't have to have all the details there, but it needs to come from a detailed spreadsheet that you need to have handy, right? SaaS and freemium models. So a freemium model is, this is like the standard thing for any startup company these days. They want people to come in and test their product and sample it, and that's for free. And for more than 25 times if you use it, or more than 1 gigabyte of storage, it costs you money, right? And so in those cases, conversions, right? So if 1,000 people sign up for free, how many people, what percentage of that are you expecting to convert into paying customers? It's just like your LinkedIn model, right? So LinkedIn, some people have paid LinkedIn subscriptions, a lot of people don't have paid subscriptions, right? And here conversions and churn, like people who actually sign up and pay, they may decide, oh, it's not that useful, so they'll just stop the subscription. So that's called churn. And go to Google and you can find a person called David Skok, S-K-O-K. He's a venture capitalist, and he writes a lot of really nice blogs about SaaS, how to calculate all these things for SaaS model. There's a lot of information available online for free if you have a SaaS business model. So if you're software as a service business model, you need to do all this research and make sure that your sales strategy accounts for all of that stuff. Otherwise, it won't be realistic, right? So that's about how you're going to make money. You need to sort of calculate it from scratch, going month by month in year 1 and year 2, and then overall year 3, 4, and 5, just how much you're going to do over the year, right? So that's one thing. And then the financial summary slide, take the help of someone who knows how to do a profit and loss balance sheet. This is for Series A and B funding. So by that time, you would have an accountant because you're already getting revenues. So take the help of somebody like that. For seed funding, just broad outlines enough, because you're just raising $500,000 to develop your product, right? you can think about it when you're raising Series A money, right? For Series A, it needs to be very, very detailed. So all of this stuff is just one set of spreadsheets. The sales strategy, because that's how you get your revenues, and then the financial summary has all the expenses. So here also you need to sort of go month by month in year 1 and year 2, and then 3, 4, and 5. You need to have all of the expenses budgeted out, right? So how much are you going to spend? How many people are you going to have? Average salary, office space, other expenses, travel expenses. So you need to sort of create all these things. On Google, there are startup financial statement preparation samples, so you can always take that, but always take the help of an accountant because you also need to do cash flow, which means when are you going to have what amount of cash, and when are you planning to close your funding, and when is that money coming in estimated, and then how you're going to spend it. So all of these things, this summary slide will just have summary of all of this stuff, but you need to have this spreadsheet. If the VC is especially interested and he says, hey, I want to do further digging into your financial summary and sales summary, then you need to have those spreadsheets ready. So the idea there is prepare the spreadsheets first, and then you can transfer those numbers onto the business plan presentation. Right. Next, the intellectual property slide. Essentially, you should address why an existing or a new competitor will not upstage you, right? So, intellectual property is a tricky thing. Patents are not always good, but the idea is that if you have a secret way of doing things, just keep it a secret. It doesn't have to be a patentable kind of thing. Sometimes you can, in the intellectual property slide, you can say, we have developed this thing over 2 years, and it took 25 people to develop this. So for any other company to come to the same level, it's going to take them that much time. So that is your intellectual property. So you have a completed development advantage, right? So it doesn't have to be patentable technology, right? But if you don't have anything patentable, you can skip this slide. So it's only if you have something that will prevent your competitors or anybody else to do from doing what you have done already, right? So that. Then the exit strategy slide. How will the investors get their money back, right? So you can this is just a very simple slide. You just think about when your company exits, which means that when it can be an IPO, you can go public, or it could be a possible acquisition, right? IPO makes sense for social media startups and startups that don't have large competitors, like Facebook, or there's a new social media thing that's coming up called Kik, K-I-K. They'll probably go IPO. Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, some of them got bought out by other big companies, and some of them went public and then got bought out. So all kinds of possibilities are there. Most of the software companies these days, they get acquired, right? So this is another thing to think about when you're starting your startup business. Always go for a niche that's not being done by other big giants. So, for example, go look at what McAfee or Amazon or Oracle or Microsoft is doing, and if you're doing something that they are not doing, then when you gain customers, when you gain clients, they'll buy you for your technology, and then they'll incorporate that with their offerings, right? A good example is Skype. Skype used to be a separate company. Microsoft bought them. Now you have Skype in every office, right? So they tried doing something similar, but Skype had more customers and users, and so Microsoft jumped in and bought them, right? And PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint was bought by was originally a startup company, and they bought it and then made it their own, right? And that's how it works. So in the exit strategy slide, mention whether it's you expect an IPO or whether you're going to exit using a possible acquisition from someone, right? So that's what goes into the exit strategy slide. Feel free to jump in the chat window and ask me any questions as we go along. So feel free to do that. Right? Funds, sort, and uses slide. So that should be the last slide. This should be something like how much money are you wanting to raise, right? So the whole point of this business plan presentation is to raise money, right? So if you don't have a slide that says how much money you're going to raise and what you're going to use it for, and it can be just expansion of engineering team, additional product development, opening branches in other places, global market development. So it can be 3 or 4 things. You don't need to specify exactly how much you're going to spend on each one, but they need to have some idea of why you are raising this money. What do you want to use it for, right? And that's where this slide comes in handy. Okay, so we went over. So these are all the different slides you need to have in your business plan, and I went over each one of these things in more detail. And here is a whole bunch of references. Click on these links if you want more details or how to create financial projections for your startup. So and then startup financial projection sales. So those will give you how to calculate those things in much more detail. Okay, so that's about business plan presentation preparation. Right? So once you have that thing, then you also need to prepare 3 or 4 things like funding pitches, right? So if you look at Google's mission statement is organizing the world's information. That's it. That's what they do. Facebook, their official mission statement is good to give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected. Uber's is make transportation as reliable as running water everywhere for everyone. So all of them have a single phrase mission statement. So you can come up with your own. So you need to sort of summarize your business in 3 or 4 words, right? This is very crucial because it can also convey, let's say you're starting a food delivery business, right? So you can say Uber for food, right? So that conveys exactly what you're doing, right? So that's the first one. The second one is elevator pitch. So if you are networking, if you meet a venture capitalist in a networking session and you have exactly 2 minutes with them, so you can say, oh, this is our I'm so and so, I'm CEO of this company, and what we do is we are like Uber for food, or we are like Slack for something. And then 1 sentence about the problem, you can say, I address the problem of computer security, and then you can say well, our solution is very unique and we use artificial intelligence or blockchain for our computer security. And then you need to specify in 1 sentence what are the business benefits. It saves a lot of money for CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, or you can say it saves time. People can get this thing done much faster and it will save them money, right? So you need to sort of write this down and then practice it a number of times. You'd also need to say proof points. We already have 5 clients, 3 unpaid pilots, and then 2 paid pilots. And then in the coming months, we're going to close on 10 more, right? And then you also need to say 1 sentence about what you're looking for. We are looking to raise seed funding of $250,000. So this whole 5-sentence thing is we are like Uber. This is the problem we solve, and our solution is unique because we are using AI and blockchain. You don't need to go into a lot of detail, and you need to specify how does it make business sense, right? So it saves money, it saves time, and then you need to specify where you are currently. I have a number of links in another slide. Watch those YouTube videos. Those are winning business plan competition pitches. So they'll exactly do what I'm outlining here. First sentence is what is the problem? What is the solution? How does it save money? And where they are currently and how they are growing, and then what they are looking for, right? 2 or 3 minutes. So that's about the elevator pitch. So the business plan pitch is the more detailed one, and every startup I've been with, for every business plan meeting, we practice, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're very experienced or the more time you put in this thing, the more successful you'll be. And this is not one of those things. Usually entrepreneurs are very lazy with this stuff, and they just think, oh, I'll just go and wing it. No, that's not. The minute you do that, when you're in your actual meeting, you're gonna make mistakes, right? So that's where you need to practice. You also need to, if you have a team, have team members along with you. The CEO or the president presents the whole business plan, but every now and then, if there is an engineering question, the person needs to call on the engineering VP, right? So they take the team with them for these meetings. And if there is a finance question, if you have a finance guy in your team, look to the finance guy. And the reason you do that is you need to sort of convince the investors that you're a team and it's not just you making all this stuff, one person. So you're not a dictator, right? Because startups die if it's not a team, right? Because there is so much to be done in such a short amount of time. Unless you are 3 or 4 people handling different things very quickly, you're not going to be successful. And the CEO or the president, the chief guy, needs to trust all these people to actually make the right decisions, right? So that's about the funding picture. So come up with a 3 or 4 word description of what your business is all about. That's one thing that you need to be ready with. The second one is 2 or 3, 5 or 6 sentences in 2 or 3 minutes. You need to be able to ask someone, so this is what we do, this is the problem we address, this is the solution, this is how we save money, and this is where we are. Like we have 3 or 4 3 paid pilots and 3 customers close to signing, and then what you're looking for. The business plan pitch, you need to go slide by slide, like what I was talking about, and be able to talk to it. So here is a slide that gives you some more links, like watch the last 2 YouTube videos. It takes about 1 minute, 2 minutes each. You'll get a really good idea of how to do an elevator pitch. These guys they won these business plan competitions, so they know what they're doing. So that brings us to term sheets. So what is a term sheet? So if you do all of these things well, then the VC will say, okay, I'm interested in investing, so let's create a term sheet. So that's what the term sheet. That's when a term sheet comes up. A term sheet is our terms and conditions. So it's actually, you need to, this is actually like a preliminary thing that you agree on, and then the lawyers expand it out into a bigger legal document with lot more words in it. But a term sheet is the broad outlines of the terms and conditions for the investment, right? So what funds are they promising, and in exchange for what? So that's exactly what needs to be covered in the term sheet. And just remember that investment's not always showing up in one big check. So if you're asking for, let's say, $500,000 seed funding, they may not give you all $500,000, right? Even when they agree to invest and all the documents are signed, they may give you $250,000 and say, I'm going to watch you for the next 6 months, see how you do, and then I'll give you the rest, right? So, for example, $2 million Series A, $1 million will be transferred to your company's bank account, and then $1 million 6 months from now, based on achieving certain milestones. So the milestones can be, oh, you need to finish version 2 of your product, or you'd say, we need to have 3 more unpaid pilots or proof of concepts. Or they might say, you need to close on 5 more sales deals. You need to bring in 5 more new customers, and then I'll give you the other $1 million. So this is something to understand. All these things will go into the term sheet. Right? So once an angel investor or VC decides to invest, term sheet is sent. So entrepreneur consults with their company attorneys and go back and forth on what terms are acceptable and what are not. So this is where negotiation comes in. VCs will always put all the worst conditions for you in the first version of the term sheet, and so your team needs to sit down and say, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, go back and forth, right? And once all terms are acceptable to all parties, then the term sheets are signed, and then the formal agreements are made. So you can go look at some term sheet examples. So I've provided some links there. So term sheet basics. So what goes into a term sheet, right? So when you start your company, you need to incorporate your company. So at that time, you incorporate it with common stock. So if, let's say, 2 or 3 or 4 founders start the company, they decide, oh, it's 50 and 50 for 2 founders, or 25% each for 4 founders, right? And you can create it with, let's say, 10,000 shares, common shares. There is VCs and angel investors need something else called preferred stock. So preferred stock has got more rights than common stock, right? And it will get converted into a common stock when they want to convert it into money, and that's what happens. The one thing to understand with VC is once you take venture money, founders will have to start all over again. So they'll actually restructure the stock ownership, and they'll redraw what is called a cap table, capitalization table. So before the funding, there'll be a capitalization table that might say 4 founders, 25% each, 10,000 shares. So after funding, it might say 10 million shares, and this is how different people are going to own different things. And what happens even for the best founders, they'll actually do what is called vesting, which means that usually year 1, so let's say you have built a product over 2 years, the first year 25% they'll give you as options, and then you will earn 25% each year or monthly the rest. So every month or every quarter or every year, they'll give you the rest of the money. The reason they do this is if you have 4 founders, there's a good chance that one person may leave or get fired, or they don't want these guys to take the unearned shares. So because they have not spent 4 years with them, they don't want to reward the founder who leaves after the first year with the same number of shares they're giving the other founders. So the idea there is usually these startups, when you do a startup, it's going to take you anywhere from 6, 7, 8, 10 years before you get out of it with your money, right? So on the others with their money. And so these 4 years, usually if the founders stick around for 4 years, they'll be fully vested, which means that, so this is something to understand. So that the day you take venture money, they're going to restructure the company stock and the ownership starts all over again. This is standard practice, and it's a thing that's done if you raise venture money. That's the drawback, right? So common stock and preferred stock. So the term sheet will outline how this thing will work. All of these different vesting, founder vesting, and capitalization table before and capitalization table after, right? One key thing there is company valuation, right? So let's say you need to go to the VC will ask you, once they are interested in investing in your company, they'll say, what is your valuation, pre-money valuation, which means that before you take the money, what do you think is your company valuation, right? So you can say $2 million, and then you are looking for $1 million as seed funding. So that makes it $3 million post money. and then the investor will get 1 million out of 3 million, which is 33.33% of the company. So that's what they'll get for putting in 1 million. So when you go for Series A, then founders will lose some more of their company because there is another investor now. So they probably will get, this original investor might invest also. So over a period of time, the founder shares get lower and lower, the valuation goes higher and higher, right? So that's why a lot of people think, okay, if it's a $1 billion valuation, like Uber is worth like multiple billions, the original founders might still own only about 5% or 6% of the company, but it's 5% and 6% of, let's say, $40 billion. That's a lot of money, right? So that's how the venture capital game works, right? So if you want to figure out how your valuation, usually what happens is you need to talk to other entrepreneurs, companies very similar to yours. You can get an idea of how they are being valued. That's one way of doing. For startup companies, that's what it is, especially technology startups. But for other things, let's say you want to open up a McDonald's franchise, right? So that's a different way of valuation. So for those things, click on that link there. I wrote an article 6 years ago. It's got many different ways of valuing your software product startups. So there's a lot more stuff to it. You can go and read it up on your own time. But this is roughly the idea. You need to have an idea of how you value your company before you start the negotiation. Right? So this is another liquidation preference is a shocking thing. So usually 2x. So venture capitalists, when they put in their money, if the company gets sold, they want to be actually paid multiples of their money first. So this is an example. So let's say investor has invested $5 million in the company is sold for $13 million. So if there is a 2x liquidation preference, then the first 2 times of 5 million, 10 million comes off first, and the venture capitalists get paid first for the 10 million, and the founders get only 3 million. So this is a term that you need to pay very special attention to, right? And if you have 2 or 3 VCs interested in your company, you can play one against the other and say, no, I won't give you liquidation preference, right? Because the other VC is interested without that. So it can also be 1x, which means that if they invested 5 million, then they get 5 million out of the 13 million, and then the rest 8 million is available for founders, right? So if the investor has invested 5 and then the company is sold for 10, the founders get nothing. I mean, that's why the liquidation preference is very key. The other thing that they do is also employee pool. So whenever venture capitalists put their money, they want to make sure that it's typically 10% of the company. This is set aside for people other than founders. So let's say you want to bring in a VP of sales and he's not a founder. 1 year, 2 years after your product is done, then they'll get options from this 10%. And this you can be extended to other employees down to even the lowest level employee. In India, it's not done that often, but in the US, it's pretty common. So if it's an entry-level employee, that person might get, say, 1,000 shares per year. The overall 10 million shares will be the company shares, right? So out of that, they'll get like a small percentage. So for startup companies, that's if they go public or IPO, it's that can make millions even for entry-level employees, right? So this is what motivates a lot of people to come work for startup companies, because they have the potential of making it big, even though they may not make too much money today. Right. The other term that you need to be very careful is board of directors, right? And so when VCs come in, they'll appoint one of their VCs as a board member. Usually the CEO or 1 or 2 founders will be on the board. Apart from, you always need to make sure that there is one external director, right? Which is not good example would be 2 founders, 2 VC board seats, and 1 external director, so that it's evenly split. So you need to make sure that in your term sheet, you need to mention this, that this is what is acceptable. As other investors join in, board of directors expand. So let's say Series A, you bring in 2 other VCs. So they'll get board seats. So you also need to go out and get additional external board members. So all of those conditions you need to make sure as an entrepreneur you clearly specify in your term sheet. Registration rights. So this is like some of these are routine stuff. So information rights is VC should get monthly financial statement and sales statement. So it's just they are making sure that CEOs and founders don't hide information from them about the company, right? And registration rights is also something that's routine. It's usually put in, so saying that at any time the company can go IPO. The founders cannot prevent the company from going IPO, right, or a public company. So that's what registration rights are all about. Right of first refusal, so which means that let's say you have in your seed funding, you have 1 investor, and then you go and raise Series A, that first investor should be able to invest in the second round also. They can always say no, they don't want to invest, but they should be given the option to invest first. So this is also like if founders, they have a lot of money, like Binny Bansal, he can actually purchase the shares of the company himself before other investors are let in. So that is right of first refusal. So all of these different things, there are a lot more things that can pop into a term sheet. This book is extremely good. If there is one book you want to buy and read for more details, this is a book that you need to have. It is actually written by a venture capitalist, but he has a lot of pointers. He invited an entrepreneur to sort of say, from an entrepreneur's point of view, what should you do? So it's a very, very good book. It's one book. If ever you want to buy one book, this is one book you need to have. Right? So we talked about business plan, we talked about pitches, we talked about term sheet basics. Now we talk about term sheet negotiation tactics, right? So when you get the first term sheet, it will be terrible. They'll put all kinds of bad things in there. So it's up to the entrepreneur to negotiate them out. So the key thing here is if you have 2 or 3 VCs interested in you, it's always demand versus supply. You can always say, hey, the other guy doesn't, I negotiated this and he's agreeable to other stuff. So if you want this deal, then you need to take this out. Like for example, this one, right? So this liquidation preference. So if a second VC says, I can give you liquidation preference, no liquidation preference, then you can negotiate that out, right? The thing is, you can keep going back and forth with all these negotiations for a long time. You want your money, you want to get going with your business stuff, and so you pick a few that are most important: valuation, board of directors, liquidation preference, that kind of stuff, and then the rest, like information rights and registration rights, they are routine. So you need to be able to recognize what those routine things are and negotiate only those things that need to be negotiated, right? So your attorneys and their attorneys will love it as long as they keep the negotiation going back and forth, because that will they ring up more hours and bill either side, both sides more, right? And so look at market conditions and be realistic. So if you have only one VC interested in you, then you don't want to negotiate that hard. If you have multiple VCs interested in you, then you can take a lot of conditions out, right? And the ball is in your court for that. So that's about the term sheet negotiation. So here are some links, how to negotiate a term sheet with a VC, a lot more detail, how to avoid common mistakes. And then term sheets, the definitive guide for entrepreneurs, it will give you an exhaustive list of different terms that can go into a term sheet. So it's a lot of preparation, right? So it's not just technology. Before you go for venture money and want to build a bigger company, like a unicorn, then all of these things you'll have to put up with. All right, so that's about all I had for today. So we're gonna Mahendran couldn't join us today, but we were talking about creating something called a pitch clinic, right? Which means that once you have a business plan, you send us those by email, and then we'll shortlist a few, and we'll have a few judges, people like me and other entrepreneurs who have gone through the whole process. We'll listen to your pitch and provide feedback for fine tuning, right? So the idea is here is where you can do this better, that kind of stuff, right? So we'll announce it. This is going to come up sometime in December or January, so we'll send an announcement out like on WhatsApp like we are usually doing. All right, so that's my contact information. So questions. So let's see what questions we have. Yeah, Elango says that would be a nice initiative. So it's not just theory that we are talking about, so we can actually plan and make sure that we help you in any way we can, because every business is different, every pitch is different, and so having somebody else listen to it and provide you feedback will always be helpful. And please do make sure that you go and look up at least those YouTube videos. It will give you a good example, 2-3 minutes. The thing that people overlook is in all the startups I've been with, for every VC meeting, the CEO and the president, successful ones, they prepare for a week. And they tailor the business plan for every VC meeting. So that laziness is something you cannot afford when raising money. I mean, coming up with business ideas and technology is only half the battle. The other half is a lot of hard work goes in. People make it appear as if it's all easy, but that's not true. Any other questions? All right. So if there are no more questions, thanks for, sorry about the mix-up earlier. I had clicked on my personal room and I was waiting there. There. All right. So if there are no more questions, thanks for joining. And once I have the recording, I'll put it up on and put these slides on SlideShare as usual and send information out. All right. Thanks much.
Thanks.